before you dismiss what you are about to hear, pause for a moment and pay attention, because this message was never intended to reach everyone. In fact, the reason you are here at this exact moment may hold far more significance than you currently understand. Out of all the countless distractions competing for your attention, something caused you to stop. Something beyond ordinary curiosity drew your focus here and kept it from moving on. It was not a coincidence. It was not a random recommendation. It was as though an invisible current gently redirected your awareness, guiding you toward a moment that has been waiting for your arrival long before you consciously recognized it. Chosen one. There is something unusual surrounding June 4th. Something so subtle that the vast majority of people will pass through it without noticing a single change. Life will continue for them exactly as it always has. They will overlook the shift completely, unaware that anything meaningful ever occurred. But your path has never been identical to theirs. You were never meant to walk through important thresholds asleep. You were never meant to ignore the signs that appear beneath the surface of ordinary reality. What is approaching now feels remarkably precise, almost as if countless unseen pieces have been moving into position for this exact encounter. There is an emerging realization drawing closer, one that seems carefully arranged by forces operating beyond the limits of logic. Yet this realization is not available to everyone. It is revealing itself only to those who have already begun standing between two worlds, the world of unconscious routine and the world of awakening awareness. Deep down, you already sense that something is different. You may not have words for it yet, but the feeling has been growing stronger. And there is an important reason you are being urged to keep this experience private for now, not because it is forbidden, but because it is unfinished. Some truths require silence before they require expression. Some revelations need space to mature before they can survive exposure. What stands before you is not merely another date on a calendar. It is not another ordinary day destined to disappear into memory. It feels more like the entrance to a new landscape, a threshold separating what has been from what is about to emerge. Whether you fully comprehend that yet or not, you have already arrived at its edge. Perhaps you have sensed evidence of this without realizing it. Perhaps you have noticed a strange stillness lingering beneath everyday life, a quiet pause hidden underneath the movement of the world. People continue rushing through schedules, conversations continue unfolding, responsibilities continue demanding attention, yet beneath all of it, there seems to be a silence that refuses to leave. It can feel unsettling because it does not behave like normal calm. Instead, it feels like anticipation, like something important is approaching but has not yet stepped into view. You may have tried to explain this sensation away. You may have blamed stress, exhaustion, distraction, or circumstance. Yet no matter how many explanations you offered yourself, the feeling kept returning. It resurfaced during quiet moments. It appeared when you were alone. It lingered in the background, even when you tried to ignore it. That persistence matters. It is not a product of imagination. It is the sensation of standing near a turning point before the turning point fully reveals itself. What makes June 4th unique is that it does not arrive dramatically. It does not announce itself through chaos, spectacle, or obvious external events. Instead, it moves through the hidden layers of experience like a barely audible whisper. Only those sensitive enough to notice subtle changes can detect its presence. You might experience it as restlessness that seems disconnected from any specific problem. You might feel an urge to withdraw from noise and seek solitude. You might notice an emotional discomfort that has no clear explanation. Others may misunderstand these experiences, interpreting them as isolation or withdrawal. But what is happening runs much deeper than that. This is not abandonment. This is preparation. Every meaningful transformation begins by creating space. Every significant realization emerges when distractions lose their power. When an important doorway begins opening, it rarely reveals itself amid noise and confusion. It appears in silence. It becomes visible to those willing to stop reacting long enough to truly observe. That is why you are being encouraged to slow down right now, not to retreat from life, but to become more aware of it, not to escape reality, but to see it more clearly. You are being asked to watch rather than immediately respond, to receive rather than constantly project, to listen rather than rush to explain, because what is approaching cannot be recognized through emotional turbulence. It becomes visible only when inner stillness creates room for understanding. There's also a deeper reason this message resonates with you while remaining invisible to many others. It is not because you are better than anyone. It is because your current stage of awareness allows you to recognize signals that others are not yet looking for. The people around you may never encounter this message. Friends may overlook it completely. Family members may remain unaware of its significance. Those who would instantly reject or criticize it may never cross paths with it at all. That is not accidental. Certain insights arrive only when someone is prepared to receive them. The reason caution is necessary now is because sharing an unfinished realization often weakens its impact. The moment a developing truth is exposed to skepticism before it has rooted itself deeply enough, confusion begins replacing clarity. Doubt begins interfering with understanding. This is why divine timing demands patience. Not everything meaningful is meant to be announced the moment it appears. Some experiences must first be lived internally. They must be allowed to settle, expand, and integrate before they can be expressed outwardly. For now, your role is simply to witness, to remain present with what is unfolding inside you, to allow the experience to develop without the pressure of external validation, because what you are moving toward cannot be proven by someone else's opinion. It cannot be measured by agreement or disagreement. It must be recognized from within, and once that recognition becomes stable, it will begin quietly transforming the way you interpret everything around you. The most important thing to remember is that the energy surrounding June 4th did not suddenly appear when the calendar reached this date. The process began long before today. The movement you have been sensing has already been unfolding beneath the surface for quite some time. Piece by piece, moment by moment, invisible threads have been weaving themselves into your experience. Small events, unexpected feelings, unexplained nudges, and subtle realizations have all been contributing to a larger pattern. Only now are those scattered pieces beginning to reveal the picture they have been creating all along. And as that picture becomes clearer, the meaning behind everything you've been sensing will start making sense in ways you never expected. Perhaps the evidence has already been appearing around you, not through dramatic events, but through subtle experiences that have been impossible to ignore. Maybe you have found yourself sitting in conversations that once felt meaningful, only to realize that something essential is no longer there. The words are still being spoken. The people are still present. The circumstances look the same from the outside, yet internally a strange distance has emerged. What once felt natural now feels strangely hollow. What once energized you now leaves you feeling disconnected. You may have questioned whether something was wrong, whether you were becoming confused or overly sensitive. But what if the opposite is true? What if these feelings are not signs of disorientation at all? What if they are evidence that a profound internal transformation is already underway? Chosen one. Every major shift begins long before it becomes visible, long before circumstances change, long before opportunities appear, long before the outer world reflects the new reality. Something deeper starts moving within. The process begins in silence. It begins beneath conscious awareness. It begins as an energetic recalibration that slowly alters the way you experience everything around you. That is what has been happening. The discomfort you feel when revisiting old habits is not accidental. The increasing weight of distractions is not random. The growing intensity of your intuition is not a coincidence. These are all signals that an old frequency is losing its hold on you. There is a reason certain patterns that once felt comfortable now feel exhausting. There is a reason you can no longer find satisfaction in things that previously occupied so much of your attention. There is a reason your inner voice has become impossible to silence. You are being drawn toward a version of yourself that cannot coexist with who you used to be. And whether you welcome that movement or attempt to resist it, the transition has already begun unfolding. This is why the energy surrounding June 4th feels so significant. Yet its significance will not appear in the way most people expect. Many spend their lives waiting for transformation to arrive through dramatic events, public recognition, or obvious signs that demand attention. They expect something external to announce that a new chapter has begun, but the shift connected to this moment operates differently. It does not arrive with celebration. It does not seek validation from the outside world. There will be no universal announcement confirming that something extraordinary has occurred. Most people will move through the day completely unaware that anything meaningful happened at all. Yet for those paying attention, For those who have already sensed the deeper movement taking place beneath the surface, the experience will be unmistakable. The sign may arrive in a single, unexpected moment. It may interrupt your thoughts when you least expect it. It may appear as a realization so clear and complete that it feels as though it emerged from somewhere beyond ordinary reasoning. Perhaps it will be an understanding that suddenly connects experiences that once seemed unrelated. Perhaps it will be a clarity that dissolves questions you have carried for far longer than you realize. Or perhaps it will be a quiet moment when uncertainty simply disappears, replaced by a level of inner certainty that requires no explanation. That is the sign. Not something displayed before your eyes, but something awakened within your awareness. The truth many people never discover is that the most important revelations rarely come from outside sources. They emerge from within. They arrive when the soul finally recognizes what the mind has been struggling to grasp. They appear when endless questioning reaches its natural conclusion and gives way to knowing. And when this happens, it does not feel chaotic. It does not feel forced. It feels natural. It feels stable. It feels as though a truth that has existed all along has finally stepped forward into the light. You may wonder why something carrying this much importance would need to remain private. Why would you be guided to protect it instead of sharing it immediately? The answer has nothing to do with exclusion. It has nothing to do with superiority. It has everything to do with timing. Not everyone occupies the same stage of awareness. Not everyone can recognize what you are beginning to recognize. More importantly, not everyone is intended to accompany you through this particular chapter of your journey. Certain transformations require solitude. Certain realizations need silence in order to develop their full strength. Imagine planting a seed and digging it up every day to prove that it is growing. The constant interference would prevent the very growth you are trying to confirm. The same principle applies here. What is unfolding within you needs room to take root. It needs freedom from outside opinions. It needs protection from skepticism, misunderstanding, and premature interpretation. If you rush to explain it before fully understanding it yourself, you risk reducing something profound into something ordinary. If you expose it too early to people who cannot perceive what you perceive, their uncertainty may begin influencing your own. And if you depend on others to validate what you are experiencing, you move your attention away from the deeper source that is guiding you. This moment is not asking you to convince anyone. It is not asking you to defend your experience. It is asking something far more challenging. It is asking whether you can trust what you know without demanding proof from the outside world. It is asking whether you can remain faithful to an inner truth before anyone else recognizes it. Because real transformation often requires exactly that kind of trust. Then there will come a moment. It may arrive unexpectedly. It may emerge during an ordinary day. There may be no dramatic build-up warning you that it is approaching. Yet, when it arrives, everything will feel different. The shift itself may appear subtle to an outside observer, but beneath that subtle surface, something irreversible will occur. It will feel as though a final piece has quietly moved into place. Not merely an idea, not merely a thought, something deeper. Something that reaches beyond logic and settles directly into the core of your being. In that instant, you will recognize that the line has been crossed. You will understand that returning to your previous way of seeing the world is no longer possible. The identity you once carried will begin to feel distant. The version of yourself that operated from old assumptions, old fears, and old limitations will seem strangely unfamiliar, almost as though it belonged to another chapter entirely. And what is remarkable is that this realization will not create panic. It will not create hesitation. Instead, it will bring a profound sense of certainty, a calm recognition that something essential has aligned. Chosen one. You are standing closer to that moment than you realize. You're approaching the edge of an understanding far greater than anything your logical mind has fully allowed itself to imagine. The experiences, emotions, and shifts you have been moving through are not isolated events. They're preparations. They're pieces of a larger design slowly revealing itself. And as the next stage begins to unfold, you will finally start to understand why you were guided here, why this message reached you, and why your awareness was drawn toward this exact moment when so many others continued walking past it without ever seeing what was waiting for them. There is a truth that is becoming increasingly difficult to avoid, and the sooner you allow yourself to face it, the sooner everything that has felt fragmented will begin to make sense. A part of you may still hesitate. A part of you may still wonder whether you are truly prepared for what this realization asks of you. Yet hesitation does not change the reality of what is happening. The shift you have been sensing was never assigned to you by accident. Your presence at this crossroads was not created by chance. Long before this period entered your awareness, long before you noticed the subtle changes unfolding within you, a deeper process had already begun. Something was quietly shaping you, preparing you, refining your ability to perceive what others often overlook. Think about the qualities that have followed you throughout your life, the heightened sensitivity you have never been able to fully explain, the instinctive knowing that seemed to arrive before evidence appeared, the persistent feeling of standing slightly outside ordinary experiences, observing life from a perspective that others rarely seem to share. There were times when those traits may have felt inconvenient. There were moments when you wished you could fit more easily into familiar environments, adopt the same assumptions as everyone around you, and move through life without constantly sensing deeper layers beneath the surface. Yet none of those experiences were meaningless. None of them were mistakes. They were part of a gradual preparation. They were strengthening your ability to recognize signals that many people never notice. They were teaching you how to trust perceptions that cannot always be explained through logic alone. Being chosen is often misunderstood. Many imagine it as a form of superiority, as though it places one person above another. But true selection has nothing to do with ego. It has everything to do with responsibility. It means being entrusted with awareness that demands maturity. It means carrying insight before it becomes obvious. It means recognizing movements beneath the surface while others are still focused entirely on appearances. And right now, whether you fully grasp it or not, you are being asked to hold awareness that cannot be interpreted through ordinary perception. This explains why your path has rarely followed predictable lines. It explains why your journey has often felt unconventional. It explains why there have been seasons when you found yourself feeling strangely alone, even in rooms filled with people. The solitude was not always physical. Sometimes it was energetic. Sometimes it was the experience of realizing that your inner world was moving through dimensions of understanding that those around you could not yet perceive. You have been guided toward this threshold because you possess the capacity to remain present when others might look away. As this awareness continues expanding, you may notice a new sensation emerging within you. It does not resemble panic. It does not resemble fear. Instead, it feels like a quiet weight settling into your chest, a seriousness, a depth, a recognition that something important is unfolding. This heaviness is not created by danger, it is created by understanding. It is the realization that your perspective is beginning to shift beyond familiar boundaries. You may look around and see people continuing their routines exactly as they always have. Conversations continue, plans continue, daily concerns continue. Daily concerns continue demanding attention, yet while observing these ordinary activities you may feel an increasing sense of distance from them, not because you have become disconnected from humanity, but because your attention is being drawn towards something deeper. You may even wonder how others can remain unaware of what feels so obvious to you. How can they not sense the change? How can they not feel the movement occurring beneath the surface? Yet this question itself marks an important stage of the journey. Awareness naturally creates a temporary separation, not because you are meant to abandon others, but because expanded perception changes the way you relate to reality. You begin noticing patterns where others see coincidence. You begin sensing shifts before visible evidence appears. You begin recognizing underlying currents while others remain focused on surface events. The weight you feel is not punishment. It is not a burden designed to overwhelm you. It is evidence of growth. It is a signal that your awareness is expanding beyond limitations you once accepted without question. You are developing the ability to perceive beneath appearances. You are becoming increasingly sensitive to subtle movements, energetic changes, and hidden connections. That level of perception cannot always be communicated through ordinary language. Sometimes it must simply be carried. Sometimes it must remain protected within silence until it becomes fully integrated. At the same time, something remarkable is happening both inside you and around you. Structures that once seemed permanent are beginning to lose their certainty. Assumptions that once felt unquestionable are becoming open to examination. Beliefs that previously appeared solid now seem less convincing than they once did. Identities that felt natural for years are beginning to feel restrictive. It can be tempting to interpret this process as instability. It can feel as though familiar ground is disappearing beneath your feet. Yet what you are witnessing is not destruction. It is revelation. The appearance of certainty is beginning to crack, allowing deeper truth to emerge through the openings. This process often feels uncomfortable because it challenges everything that has previously gone unquestioned. You may find yourself reconsidering relationships that once seemed perfectly clear. You may begin evaluating decisions through an entirely different lens. You may even discover yourself revisiting assumptions about your purpose, your direction, and your place in the larger story of your life. These experiences can create temporary disorientation. They can make you feel as though old maps no longer apply. But this discomfort serves a purpose. You cannot move fully into what is authentic while remaining attached to what was never completely true. The energy surrounding June 4th is not manufacturing these changes, it is illuminating them. It is bringing hidden developments into view so clearly that they can no longer be ignored. What has been shifting beneath the surface is finally becoming visible to your conscious awareness. This is why many people feel an increasing desire to withdraw during periods like this. If you have noticed a strong urge to spend more time alone, to create distance from social obligations, or to step back from constant interaction, it is important that you understand what is happening. This impulse is not evidence that something is wrong. It is not a sign of failure. It is not a symptom of becoming disconnected in a harmful way. It is part of the alignment process itself. When internal transformation reaches a certain depth, external noise becomes more difficult to tolerate. Environments that once felt comfortable may suddenly feel draining. Conversations that once held your interest may leave you exhausted. Activities that once filled your schedule may begin feeling strangely empty. This happens because your energy is recalibrating. Your awareness is adjusting to a new level of perception. Solitude becomes valuable during these periods not because it allows you to escape life, but because it creates the conditions necessary for clarity. Within quiet spaces, you can hear your own truth more clearly. Within stillness, you can separate your authentic knowing from the opinions and expectations surrounding you. Within moments of intentional withdrawal, you gain the opportunity to process the profound changes unfolding beneath the surface of your awareness. And as you continue allowing that process to unfold, you will begin discovering that the answers you have been seeking were never hidden from you. They were simply waiting for enough silence to finally be heard. What many people around you might misunderstand as retreat is actually one of the most important stages of preparation. From the outside, it can appear as distance. It can appear as silence. It can appear as a lack of movement. Yet beneath that appearance, something far more significant is taking place. You are not being pulled away from the world because you are meant to disconnect from it. You are being drawn inward because there is something essential that must be recognized before the next chapter can begin. There is an encounter approaching your awareness, one that has already begun moving toward you long before you consciously realized it existed. The timing of this encounter is far more exact than it appears. It is already in motion, already unfolding, already traveling through unseen pathways toward the precise point where it will meet your understanding. As June 4th arrives, what reaches you will not come through dramatic events or unmistakable announcements. It will not demand attention through noise. Instead, it will emerge through something deeply personal and unexpectedly subtle. Perhaps it will appear as a thought, unlike the thoughts you normally have. Perhaps it will arrive as an understanding that seems complete the moment it appears, requiring no effort to assemble. Perhaps it will come through an experience that carries an unusual weight, a meaning so undeniable that you cannot simply dismiss it and move on. Whatever form it takes, it is important that you understand something. This moment is not random. It is not meaningless coincidence. It is targeted with extraordinary precision. It is meant to reach you exactly where you are in your journey, and when it arrives, there will be something within you that instantly recognizes it without needing anyone else to confirm its validity. The experience itself may be quiet, yet its impact will be profound. You may notice a sudden stillness settling over your body. You may feel a level of clarity that seems impossible to explain. You may even experience a strange sensation that time itself has briefly slowed, creating enough space for you to fully absorb what is taking place. When this happens, resist the urge to dissect it immediately. Resist the temptation to analyze every detail. This is not a moment designed for overthinking. It is a moment designed for receiving. Because what is occurring is not simply an idea entering your awareness. It is an alignment taking place within you, a shift that quietly changes the direction of everything that follows. Yet as powerful as this experience may be, there is something else you must prepare for. The closer you move toward genuine understanding, the more likely doubt will attempt to make itself heard. It rarely arrives as an obvious enemy. It rarely announces itself openly. Instead, it speaks softly. It presents itself as reason. It asks seemingly harmless questions. It suggests that perhaps you are reading too much into things. It encourages you to believe there must be a simpler explanation. If this voice appears, do not be surprised. You have encountered it before. In fact, some of the most important moments of your life are accompanied by this same presence. Doubt often emerges when you are standing near a truth powerful enough to challenge the limits of your current understanding. It is not always evidence that something is wrong. Often it is evidence that something is so meaningful that the mind struggles to accept it immediately. This is why discernment becomes essential. You must learn to recognize the difference between doubt and knowing. Doubt moves in circles. It repeats itself endlessly. It creates agitation without resolution. Knowing carries a different quality entirely. It feels steady. It feels grounded. It does not need to argue for its existence. It simply exists. As this moment unfolds, your ability to distinguish between these two voices will determine how clearly you receive what is being shown to you, because you are approaching a boundary that cannot be uncrossed. Once you step beyond it, there is no returning to the version of reality you inhabited before. The transformation may not appear dramatic to anyone watching from the outside. Most people may never notice anything has changed. Yet internally the shift will be immense. You are approaching the point where awareness becomes permanent, the point where what has been seen cannot be unseen, the point where what has been understood cannot be forgotten. From that moment forward, you will begin interpreting life through a different lens. Your decisions will carry a different level of consciousness. Your perceptions will operate from a deeper place. Your relationship with reality itself will begin to change. This is why the moment matters so much. It represents the movement from searching towards certainty, from observing change to becoming change. And if you currently feel caught between anticipation and uncertainty, if part of you senses something important approaching while another part struggles to identify exactly what it is, understand that this feeling is not evidence of confusion. It is evidence that you are standing exactly where you need to be. There is also another process unfolding beneath everything else, something that feels older than your current identity and older than the experiences that shaped your present life. It arises quietly. It does not usually appear through detailed memories or clear explanations. Instead, it emerges through familiarity. You may encounter thoughts, symbols, impressions, or realizations that feel strangely significant. They may seem connected to something you know deeply despite never consciously learning it. The sensation resembles recognizing a place you have never visited while somehow feeling completely at home there. This experience is not fantasy. It is not invention. It is remembrance. Something within your soul is beginning to reconnect with knowledge that has always existed beneath the surface of conscious awareness. As June 4th draws closer, this process becomes stronger. Not necessarily through words, not necessarily through images, but through feeling, through recognition, through an inner certainty that bypasses logic and speaks directly to the deepest part of who you are. What makes this experience so powerful is that it does not feel like acquiring new information. It feels like rediscovering something ancient, something familiar, something that was waiting patiently for the right moment to return to the surface. And once that process begins, it continues expanding, it continues deepening, it continues reshaping your understanding of yourself and your place within the larger reality around you. Yet awakening does not bring clarity alone. It also brings release. As deeper awareness enters your life, emotions that have remained hidden for years often begin rising toward the surface. You may notice unexpected waves of feeling. You may find yourself overwhelmed without any obvious external cause. Old grief may return. Forgotten disappointments may suddenly demand attention. Certain realizations may trigger emotional responses far stronger than you anticipated. If this occurs, do not interpret it as weakness. Do not assume something is wrong. What you are experiencing is a process of purification. The energy moving through you is incompatible with what remains unresolved. As a result, it begins bringing hidden emotions into the light so they can finally be released. This process is necessary. Every feeling that surfaces carries information. Every emotional release creates additional space for what is waiting to enter. Do not suppress these experiences. Do not attempt to explain them away through logic alone. Allow them to move through you, because each one is helping clear the path ahead. While these internal changes continue unfolding, there are also movements occurring beyond your immediate perception. Invisible adjustments are taking place throughout your life. Circumstances are shifting. Certain opportunities may unexpectedly appear while others quietly disappear. Relationships may evolve. Connections may strengthen or weaken. Situations may rearrange themselves in ways that initially seem confusing. At times, this can feel unsettling because you cannot always see the purpose behind the changes while they are happening. Yet what appears random is often part of a larger design. What appears chaotic is often part of a precise reordering process. The alignment occurring around you is not careless, it is deliberate. Every adjustment is positioning you for what comes next. Even when you do not understand why events are unfolding as they are, trust that there is a pattern operating beneath the surface. Nothing is happening without purpose. Every movement contributes to a larger sequence that is gradually guiding you towards something not yet fully visible. Then there may come a stage where outwardly very little seems to happen. Internally, everything feels intense, yet externally the world appears unchanged. This period can test your patience. It can create the impression that you're waiting for something that refuses to arrive. Yet this stage serves an important purpose. It is not a delay. It is preparation. The lesson here is not passive waiting. The lesson is maintaining alignment without requiring immediate evidence. True stability develops during moments when faith must exist without proof. You are being asked to remain centered in what you know, to trust what you feel even when external confirmation has not yet appeared, to avoid forcing outcomes before their proper time, because the breakthrough moving toward you will not require struggle. It will not require manipulation. When it arrives, everything will fall into place with a level of precision that makes perfect sense only after it has happened, revealing that every experience leading to that moment was necessary, and every step along the journey was guiding you exactly where you needed to be.